Hi, so welcome everybody to this webinar where we will be talking about Nevada County's Drought Resiliency Plan and what it entails, what it is, what it isn't. And we are joined by Amy Irani, the Director of Environmental Health for Nevada County. This is her baby. Alex Keeble-Toll, the Director of Nevada County OAS, Chip Close from NID, and Orit Kalman, who is representing Stantec today. Welcome to all of you, and I would say, Amy, take it away.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Pascal. I appreciate it. And I want to thank all of our panelists that are here so very much, and to you, Banette, for helping us in hosting this Nevada County Drought Resiliency Plan kind of update or public information to you all. We have a PowerPoint presentation that we are going to go through for you so that all of you can kind of get an idea, briefing from all of your panelists. And to start off with, I just want to, Pascal's really done that with introduction, so we can skip through that initial slide, but there we are. That's all of us here, except for Roja, who is also part of Stantec. She is not with us this evening, but there we are, and we are your panelists here to answer any questions you might have after we get through this presentation. So thank you to everyone who's joining us. So kind of a brief summary on SB 552 and why we have to do this drought resiliency plan for the county. Now, the Governor Newsom in 2021 signed this into the Senate bill into effect. And it requires counties to really look heartily at what's happening both with individual residential wells and the services also to small water systems, small community water systems. So they're also called state smalls. And one thing to be mindful is that, we just came out of a 5-year drought. And in some cases, a lot of us rural county areas saw a lot of these, our resources for drinking water go dry. So with that and understanding that, the state Board of Drinking Water really wanted the counties to get proactive and form advisory groups and come together to find a possible plan moving forward. Should we see increased drought, we're seeing already increased climate change in that. And then also look at a risk assessment tool, which will help us in pulling resources together. Next slide, please. So what have we done so far? So far, per the Senate bill, we have established an advisory group, and we have a lot of great folks on that group. You have a couple of panel members here that are on that group today with us. And Orit is going to talk a little bit about the site or the risk assessment for the county, which really looks at what are the socioeconomic vulnerabilities as well as what are the physical vulnerabilities that identify increased risks for homeowners that would lead to shortages and other emergencies. And so what this is part of right now, what we're conducting here is this town hall, is a more robust engagement with the community. And community input in developing this plan is really, really a significant resource and tool in moving forward and how we develop this, because your input's really going to help us as we move forward. And we have a survey. I'm going to keep plugging that this whole time. Please take the survey. So we'll have a link to that moving forward. But then what we will do is we're going to identify strategies. We're going to come up with a draft plan. And then we'll also engage the public in kind of giving us feedback. And we'll eventually present this to the board. And it will fold into, our hope is it will fold into what Alex will talk a little bit about is how we have the local hazard mitigation plan. It's going to fall into kind of an overall county resource that we can lean to should we need to. Next slide, please. So these are the members really quickly of our advisory group. You see, we have the city entities, we have NID, we have Truckee and Donner Summit, We have a water operator, that would be Cramner, who's just a representative of managing a small water system. We have the Cannabis Alliance, Farm Bureau, Ag Commissioner, County OES, and you've got your county environmental health department that is leading this charge. So what did we do last year? Last year, we were able to secure some funding support via the Department of Drinking Water in the amount of $125,000, which Reed and her colleague Roja have been helping us with this so far, utilizing that funding. And we identified stakeholders, we did a risk assessment, and we held our first meeting in November last year. Next slide, please. So where are we today? Part of this plan right now is we're kind of in the survey. We're in the survey mode. And again, please, please, please go to the website, www.nevadacountyca.gov /DRPS, and actually S is survey spelled out. So it's Drought Resiliency Plan Survey. It'll take you about 5 minutes or less, and it gives us really important feedback. So I appreciate everyone who's taken it. Thank you for taking the survey thus far. All right, so I think next slide. So I'm going to push this over now to Ori for a briefing on the Stantec side of kind of the risk assessment and what has transpired to date.
Terrific. Thanks, Amy. Thanks for inviting me to join this community meeting. And just to reinforce the importance of this survey, this Drought Resilience Plan is for the community. And so understanding your experience, understanding resources needs and ways that we can move forward is particularly important for this plan. So we really hope that we can, whether it's on this call or through the survey or contacting Amy with the county, really important for us to hear from you. You are ultimately are the one that this plan is for. So in Nevada County, I'm going to talk a little bit about what have we been doing a little bit up to this point. And Amy, you let me know when we're ready to answer questions and solicit feedback. But as Amy said, the Drought Resilience Plan is really focused on domestic wells and state small water systems. These are the very small systems that are not generally included in other type of planning efforts related to water. In Nevada County, it's important to note that there are over 19,000 domestic wells throughout the counties. And there are 5 state small water systems, and they're listed here. So that's really the focus of the plan. And what we're looking to do in the plan as required by the regulation is to first identify vulnerabilities and risks in the county, and then use that information to plan both for water shortage response actions. So what do we do when we have a water shortage, whether it's due to drought or other emergency conditions, and also at the same time think long-term strategies to mitigate those risks and address some of the vulnerabilities. So that's the opportunity long-term to really improve county resilience to support domestic wells and state small water systems. So you'll see on this slide, really what is very unique to Nevada County is the fact that most of the county is made up of fracture rock, and that's where most of the domestic wells are located. There is one alluvial aquifer in the county, that's the yellow area on the east side, that's the Martise Valley Basin. And we know from doing the risk analysis that that's considered a low priority basin. And so the question is, why is it so important that fracture rock, why is fracture rock a concern and an issue in the county? And that is because generally areas with fractured rock may have variable and inconsistent amount of water. And it's really quite challenging to determine the amount of groundwater recharge that may happen from year to year. So there's a lot of uncertainty related to fracture rock area. So understanding that in mind and having that in mind, the way the plan is developed, we are required to have those two elements. One is understanding the potential drought and water shortage risks, and also based on that, then identify those short-term and long-term solutions to specifically to the state small and domestic wells in the county. And I think it's important to note as we're looking at some of the minimum considerations that we are required to look at, things like consolidation opportunities, looking at mitigation programs for domestic wells, considering resources for emergency and interim drinking water solutions, and also looking at implementation and funding considerations. So as we're looking at all these different requirements, and I think as Amy said, in our advisory group, we have other interest in the counties, including the public water systems, because it's really important to consider the county as a whole as we're considering it. So again, this plan is for domestic wells and state smalls, and we're looking for your input to really understand what's on your mind and what should be included and considered as we're developing this plan. So the risk assessment. So when we're thinking about how do we go about understanding risks and concerns, we're looking at evaluating potential hazards and thinking about the interaction of those hazards with the infrastructure, the water systems, so we can really understand those vulnerabilities. The way we've started the risk assessment is by using a tool that was developed by the California Department of Water Resources that considered a host of physical and social indicators to assess those vulnerabilities. I included a link to the tool because it is a publicly available tool that anybody can go on and use. It has all these different map options that you can look to just kind of see what it looks like in your county and in your region. So it's an opportunity for you to do that as well. The way the tool was developed, there was an advisory group, a County Drought Advisory Group that was really a representation from throughout the state to identify what are the indicators, what do we need to look at when we're thinking about risks and vulnerabilities as it relates to water shortage. And so this particular committee that came together to advise the Department of Water Resources identified the indicators that we're looking at. And so, of course, there's a whole host, or about 27 different indicators that we kind of run the analysis through. But we're really focusing on what is unique about Nevada County because the counties in our state so different. And so this is where it becomes really important to look at the results of the tool, check in with the advisory group, check with community members to ground truth the results that we're seeing through this tool. So that becomes really an important thing. Okay, so with that in mind, just to share with you some of the results and things that we're looking at when we're using the DWR tool. So, of course, historical drought records, repeated events of dry and extreme droughts is something that we're looking at. We see that throughout the state. That's no different in Nevada County. We've seen a warming in the past years that especially for the region in Nevada County where we see these domestic wells that are really in areas where there is a lot of uncertainty, it becomes an important consideration. We also looked at groundwater levels. There are 10 monitoring wells in Nevada County. Those are really focusing on the Martise Valley groundwater basin. So it might be hard to see, but it's kind of on the east side of the county. And we see that generally in the aquifer, it looks like there is sufficient water, except for one that is below normal groundwater level condition. And so that is consistent with that designation of low concern for the aquifer. So just wanted to bring that up. As you probably well aware, wildfire risk is particularly an important vulnerability to consider that can result in water shortage. And so when we look at the map, you can see kind of just the center of the county is particularly vulnerable, with some other hotspots on the northeast of the county. We also looked at water quality risk. This information comes from the State Water Resource Control Board, and we see that there are various hotspots throughout the county where water quality might be of an issue. These are the very dark shaded areas. And so these are areas where we might have to go back and explore some more. What specifically are the water quality issues in these areas that may impact water availability? By far, the most important thing that drives risk in the county is the fact that we see high risk and very high density of domestic wells, especially on the western part of the county. So the way this map kind of tried to represent the conditions in the county is you see that if there are orange areas, which you might see near the Martise Basin, although there are a high number of wells, it's a low vulnerability because there haven't been identified too many of the risks, as opposed to what you see on the west side of the county, where it's either brown or blue because we see high physical vulnerabilities. And in many cases, that aligns also with areas where there is high density of wells. So these tend to be the issues that we're looking to focus on, and as we're thinking about response action and long-term strategies. So just to summarize, the vulnerabilities that we're really focusing on is the fact that we have repeated consecutive dry years that are showing up in an area where there's a lot of fracture rock, and so that increases uncertainties in terms of understanding water availability, the high density of domestic wells, wildfire risk, and in some areas, water quality issues that we need to explore. So these are the key things that we're seeing through our risk assessment. We share some of this with the advisory group. And we would love at some point, when Amy says it's time, to get your reaction to what we see through the Department of Water Resources risk assessment tool, to see what are you concerned about. And also, as we're looking ahead, would love to hear from you. What are things that you think would be important to prepare for potential future water shortages in your area? And I'll pause. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Appreciate that brief, and so you all have an idea of kind of the work that Stantec's been doing with the advisory group. All right, so now we're going to jump over and go to Alex with the Office of Emergency Services. Alex, thank you, and I will turn it over to you to kind of give a little brief and how you see drought and wildfire in your division coordinating. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. So, I mean, the Nevada County Office of Emergency Services, though we typically associate our work specifically being related to wildfire, we really are tasked with addressing all hazards countywide. So not only does drought have a nexus with how our forests respond in terms of forest health conditions. So if we have drought, we typically have more stressed trees that are more susceptible to disease and pest and die off. But water in itself and the lack thereof constitutes a hazard for Nevada County that we have an interest in mitigating the impact of. So very briefly, we address hazards through planning and preparedness. So things like our Ready, Set, Go handbook, what can we do on the front end to ensure that we will be resilient in the face of hazards? Mitigation, so what are the types of projects and actions that would lessen that impact? Response, if we have to actually respond to a disaster like a wildfire, and then how do we recover from that disaster? Next slide, please. And ultimately, at the end of the day, with all of these hazards, resilience is the goal of OES. So, this graphic is showing that if you have a high level of preparedness when you have a disaster like wildfire happen, you are going to dip down in terms of your capacity when you're in response. But if you're prepared, you're not going to go below that kind of tipping point of permanent loss. You're really going to be elastic. We can think about resilience as being elasticity. We're going to be able to bounce back and recover. And so strategic planning efforts around things like wildfire and drought help us be prepared on the front end so that we can respond and recover from and ultimately be resilient in the face of these disasters. Next slide. So some of you in Nevada County may be familiar with our Community Wildfire Protection Plan that we wrapped up earlier this year. And I bring this up specifically because when we did our CWPP, we looked at wildfire as a hazard, so weather, topography, and fuel. But then we also looked at what's important to our community, high value resources and assets that are at risk when we have wildfire. And then how can we align how we're addressing hazard with what's important to us as a community? And I bring this up because there's some rural characteristics in Nevada County that we incorporated into that CWPP so that we are capturing those. And one of the things we did was include domestic wells underneath our critical infrastructure. So really drilling into where do we have areas of vulnerability or potential vulnerability because, for instance, if we had a wildfire and domestic wells were impacted by that fire, potentially contaminated or otherwise, that would make recovery very difficult. And so we want to make sure that we are looking at that on the front end so that we can effectively recover and bounce back from disasters. Our local hazard mitigation plan was really that 10,000 foot level look at all hazards countywide. And so our local hazard mitigation plan specifically calls out drought as a hazard that we need to mitigate in Nevada County. In terms of how that kind of worked out, we have moderate adaptive capacity for drought, and it's a medium hazard rank. So we're kind of right in the middle there. We need to improve our adaptive capacity, in particular with how we prepare for and respond to impacts to our domestic water supply. And so again, that's why these strategic planning efforts are important. Our local hazard mitigation plan does call out specific mitigation actions that we can take around drought. So these include local plans and regulations. These would be things like policies and codes that influence the way lands and buildings are developed. So you could think about policies and codes around whether or not you can build if you have sufficient domestic water in terms of a well when you're getting your building permit. We also look at natural systems protection. So these are things that would, for instance, ensure that water that's flowing into Nevada Irrigation District's water storage infrastructure are ensuring that that water is of high quality, that it's of sufficient quantity. So protection of things like forest health to ensure that that water is making its way into those storage facilities in a way that allows it to be used. Preventative measures, these are different actions that we're taking to ensure that things like stormwater is being managed and that other contaminants aren't getting into our water supply. Natural resource protection is similar to natural systems protection. So we're really looking at how do we make sure that what we think of as our green infrastructure is functioning effectively. So tying this back to wildfire mitigation and forest health, this would be ensuring that we have healthy forests that are able to effectively absorb water into the soil, that we have healthy soil that is effectively percolating and ensuring that that water is potentially free of contamination. And then finally, emergency services, and that's really in that response and recovery piece. These are things like, what would OES do to support our community constituents if there were a drought emergency? So things like, supporting NID when a drought emergency is declared, ensuring that people are aware of the importance of adhering to water restrictions, taking other measures to ensure that people have access to clean and reliable water if there is an emergency. Next slide. I think that's what I've got.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Alex. And I encourage folks just to touch base with Pascal. Folks can type in the chat their questions. Is that something they can do, Pascal? If they, in hearing everything, you can definitely send in questions in that as you think of them, and they'll definitely be addressed.
Yes, and also we'll have a resource list that has a link to your survey. We'll have a PDF of the PowerPoint for anyone who's interested, who wants to look more closely at these slides. All that, I will put all the links. As soon as I stop sharing my screen, I will put all the links in there. And again, in the resource section, after the meeting, everybody's going to get an email with all those links included.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much. And thank you both, Orit and Alex. And now we're going to jump over to Nevada Irrigation District's Chip Close. Chip, thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate it. I appreciate the invite too. And also thanks to Pasquale for setting this town hall up. Very useful, very informative, I hope, for all the folks out there. I'll just reflect on that picture. I look a little more gray. Thanks. I looked a lot younger back then. Anyway, NID's watershed and water service area is probably what most people think about when they're local to Grass Valley and Nevada City. And so you got to wonder, if we're working on a Nevada County Drought Resiliency Plan, is NID involved in that? The answer is yes. And this slide here kind of depicts where the heart of NID's service area. You can see the area shaded in that orange color is basically the area in which NID has surface water rights to serve those areas with our waters. Anything outside of that orange area, we don't really have the rights to serve. But one important part of that area is it is an area that we provide not only potable drinking water, but also raw water to those areas that will help all those folks that were highlighted earlier as having potential challenging well supplies. So next slide, please. I'll just go into quickly what we offer, what we provide. NID provides two types of water services. Obviously, the potable drinking water to the homes within the local areas of Grass Valley, Nevada City and beyond, as well as our 500 miles of raw water canals. Next slide. We have 6 different treated drinking water systems for Nevada County. This first slide you see here shows the Elizabeth George treated drinking water system. And as you can see, it is the area around Cascade Shores, Nevada City, Grass Valley, and southward. Next slide. This is our Loma Rica treated drinking water system. It's headquartered up by the airport in Grass Valley, and it provides potable drinking water service down that Highway 174 corridor out towards Rollins, and then south down the Highway 49 corridor towards Alta Sierra. And then we also provide the drinking water service for the Lake Wildwood Penn Valley area. Next slide. As well as the Lake of the Pines drinking water area, or subdivision. Now, the important part about all of those maps is those areas are all provided drinking water via surface water from NID. These folks don't rely on wells. And so we are the provider of water service for those. The next few maps that I have will show you the raw water service areas. Go ahead, next slide. Now, these are all areas where our canals traverse, and the water provided by these canals is solely for irrigation purposes. So although it flows through some pretty critical well and well water areas, you really aren't supposed to be using these canals for drinking water purposes in the home. However, there is some added benefit in that the customers in this area can use this water to irrigate the grounds around their homes for fire protection, for growing crops, those kinds of things. And also a little bit of groundwater is probably being assisted through leakage through these canals and helping the groundwater supply in some manner. This particular slide here shows all of the Nevada County canals and where they go. Gravity feed all the way from Scotts Flat to Smartsville on the left-hand side of the screen, and then all the way down towards Lake of the Pines on the bottom half of the screen. Next slide. And then a portion of the canals, basically the top part of your screen there, is in Nevada County as well, up around the Lake of the Pines area. Everything down below is in Placer County. Next slide. So NID is a fairly large water purveyor. We have over 3,000 service connections. So that means that NID is required by the Department of Water Resources to develop an ag and urban water management plan every 5 years. And we do so. Within that ag and urban plan, it provides a description of the reliability of supplies, the strategy for meeting our needs in the future, as well as supply sources and estimates of past, present, and projected water uses. NID just recently wrapped up the plan for water process where we projected our water use over the next 50 years. We looked at all aspects of future water use, including evapotranspiration, climate change, more demands, more customer base. And we're utilizing all that data and folding it into our ag and urban water management plans. And in all actuality, we actually have a update due in the next year. So we're kind of mirroring the county here. The county is performing theirs right now, and we will be doing the same in the next year. But the good news is we're looking forward to helping each other and maybe sharing this information across so that we can inform each other's plans moving forward. Next slide. Within the ag and urban water management plans, there's a requirement for a drought and a water shortage contingency plan. We do have that. It is state required. It has 6 different steps to it. And if you go to the nidwater.com webpage, you can find all the information about it. Next slide. This is an example of what the different stages look like, and they vary based on the severity of water supply shortage. So for instance, stage 1 that you see on the screen here is our most minor stage. It's a very short supply shortage, and it becomes only voluntary actions by our customer base. But as drought sinks in deeper or water supply becomes less, we increase that stage and ask for increased reductions. As you can see, that stage 2 is a 20% supply shortage estimate. We ask for more from our customers, it becomes mandatory, and so on and so forth, all the way up to stage 6. And again, this information is available at nidwater.com. Next slide. In addition to all the ag and urban plans, as well as the shortage contingency plans, we also have a very useful page on water use and efficiency. And so if folks are interested in conserving their well water usage or even cutting back on their domestic usage, we have some great information on our website about water use efficiency and how to save water just in your everyday lives. And I think that's it. Just encourage everyone to visit nidwater.com for some more information on those topics. And I threw this slide in there because I thought it would be hot, middle of summer, cool you off a little bit, but the weather's actually been very, very cool for this time of year.
That's wonderful. Thanks so much, Chip. What a great breakdown, and I really appreciate that background information. So once again, gonna kind of just wrap it up really quick, a couple more slides, encouraging everyone to take the survey. And I want to just preface something here for those of you that might have a concern. The survey and this whole process is by no means in any way about metering or monitoring your residential well use at all. It's truly about finding a path, identifying the needs, identifying the risks, and then seeing what we can do collaboratively with NID, with Chip and his team, working with the city entities and seeing how we come together to address a county-wide need should an event happen where we do have a significant decrease in residential well supply. So please take the survey. Pascal's going to send the link, and please share it with your neighbors, your colleagues, everyone that you know. The more input we get back, the better. So really appreciate it. And I think I have one more slide. Yes, if you go to our website, we've got all of this information regarding the survey, kind of other information on what's been done to date, but it's nevadacountyca.gov /DRP for Drought Resiliency Plan. You'll find everything there. And as we update and have more information, we will put it on that website as well. So we'll keep you, kind of in tune. So now we're going to open it up, and I'm hoping we get a lot of really great questions. Feel free to ask any of our panelists any questions. And we look forward to hearing from you. So Pascal, I don't know if you've had any kind of write-ins or anything, but.
Yes, indeed, I did. So I think you addressed the one that I get the most often. It's like, are they going to come and put a meter on my well?
Yeah, no, that absolutely not. I want everybody to rest assured. Please share that information with your neighbors, your friends, your colleagues. That's truly the information that you provide back really is going to answer questions to us to know how prepared are you, what location we're mapping this data only by zip code. So we can see where largest areas, whether it's Western, Central, or Eastern Nevada County, to find out where the biggest need is.
And then the second most frequent question, and I'm fairly certain, Chip, you know what I'm going to say. It's like, so are you planning for an artificial drought? And what, and then insert the term of your choice, is going on at Spalding? So I think I'll throw that one to Chip.
Yeah, thank you, Squall.
Sorry.
Unfortunately, NID doesn't control the PG&E system. So if we did, we would do everything in our power to make this come to an end. I can tell you that we are currently in a water supply emergency because of the lack of supply from PG&E. The good news is an update today. They are progressing nicely and on schedule. And we do anticipate getting our water supply back, hopefully in the month of July, and hopefully sooner rather than later in the month of July. So that's the good news. Until then, we continue to ask for conservation and cutbacks, and we do thank our customer base for doing that. We have seen great response, and that response has actually followed our drought contingency plan that is in place. So that's a great example of what the county's striving for in this plan, is preparing for a water supply emergency such as this that can benefit people with wells and surface water. So I think it does tie nicely with tonight's topic, but hang in there, everybody. Hopefully we'll get through this quickly.
And I will not even ask you about the other powerhouse. I'm not going to go there.
Thank you.
And one question for Alex is, and you touched on it, Alex, during your presentation, that in case of a wildfire, if there is an emergency, there is also not just the immediacy of the fire, there's also the long-term effects of a fire, something like the King Fire, for example, that ran through the Rubicon, that the sedimentation that, for example, El Dorado Irrigation District experienced with that and the Caldo Fire. I mean, I think Stumpy Meadows was a reservoir that they had that was really, really impacted. And is the county prepared if we have such a catastrophic wildfire, like say something that would impact, say, Scotts Flat or Rollins for the Western Nevada County, the larger reservoirs, and of course the surrounding well owners? Do you have contingency plans, and do you have long-term support plans, or is that part of developing this drought contingency plan?
I mean, both. So insofar as our local hazard mitigation plan does include the recommendations around how to best mitigate against drought, I can certainly tell you that we use our community wildfire protection plan and the project priority areas that were identified through that plan to prioritize placement of fuel mitigation projects in areas that will prevent fire from impacting high-value resources and assets, including domestic wells and critical water infrastructure and natural features like watersheds. Because yes, absolutely, Placer County is doing a tremendous amount of work with Placer County Water Agency in the French Meadows area, and that's because the impacts of wildfire on those water storage facilities. And so that's kind of on the front end in terms of how do we prioritize those locations. In terms of the recovery piece, I mean, it is prioritizing recovery for those areas first where there is the potential to have long-term impacts on watersheds. And we've seen this in the area of the river fire, the Lowell fire, which was, I think, 2017, I think had some impacts to the upper reaches of Rollins Reservoir. We also looked at where are hydraulic mines and other areas of soil instability located across Nevada County to prioritize those areas to prevent a fire from traveling in such a way that it would remove the vegetation and kind of that path between a hydraulic mine site where you would expect to see increased sedimentation during storm events to prevent that sediment from easily traveling across a burn scar area into a watershed. And then in terms of impacts to wells themselves, again, that's one of the reasons why in the CWPP, we look specifically at where do we have a high density of residential wells, because we would again want to prevent impacts there, knowing that in the aftermath of a wildfire, if a well is contaminated or if your well infrastructure is gone, you're no longer able to reside in that location. So we haven't specifically had to delve deeply into these watershed impacts per se, and we're fortunate to have several local NGOs like Sierra Streams Institute and South Yuba River Citizen League that do monitor our water quality. So we're starting to get our arms around data that shows the importance of prioritizing response and recovery in wildfire areas to prevent that impact to our watersheds. So certainly a work in progress, but it's definitely something we're looking at through multiple lenses, really hoping that we can front load that process, right? That we can spend that dollar on mitigation so that we don't have to spend those $6 on future recovery, and that we're thinking intelligently about where we're placing projects. Because recovery from wildfire in particular impacts to watersheds is incredibly challenging, and we recognize that.
And for our attendees, if you look at the bottom where you see the chat and reaction, the share, you see a tab that says resources. And if you click on that, you will see there's two links. There's a link to Amy's drought resiliency survey. Please take the survey. She says 5 minutes. It's not 5 minutes, 2 minutes. That's all it takes. And then you can also sign up for updates at the for the email list, and then the document that would be the PDF file of the presentation. So those resources are available to anybody in that is joining us here as members of the public. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put those either in the chat or in the Q&A section. I will be happy to pull them out. And as far as questions that were emailed to us, so I think mostly we covered what was top of mind for everybody. It's like the meters, PG&E, of course, and then wildfire, because we are, of course, in a high fire. Our risk, our hazard is very high to very high. But again, drought is also, and I don't know if, who wants to speak to that, but for example, the US Drought Monitor he is geared towards more towards farmers and ranchers, because it's based more on agriculture than me not putting into a crop of tomato plants this year, because we are on a well, and instead of tomatoes I'm going to plant lavender and rosemary because they need less water. So can somebody speak to why the US drought monitor sometimes says, well, it's a medium drought, when we are all like, oh no, this is a real drought?
I think you're referring the medium drought, and that analysis was really in reference to the entire county mitigation plan, correct? I think that if I may speak for Alex, I think that was a survey that was conducted in comparison nationwide, as I understand, right? To do that comparative analysis to see where does the county sit. But Alex, you may have other information that's correlated much better than that as far as looking at it analytically, why we are medium versus, any other risk level.
Yeah, I mean, so for the local hazard mitigation plan, the consultant did a pretty complex analysis of the different hazards that we expect to hear county-wide, or expect to see county-wide. And so, drought, we're kind of at moderate risk, medium risk, compared to wildfire, which, as Pascal mentioned, 92% of our population is high to very high fire hazard severity zone. That doesn't speak to whether we should be concerned about drought per se. It just speaks to how does drought fall in the larger spectrum of hazards that we would expect to occur in Nevada County. How large of an area of the population will we expect to be impacted by those hazards? How long would they potentially last? Kind of some of those larger scale parameters around what would this really mean for us. And I think, when you're looking statewide, right, Nevada County, we have a lot of the headwaters in our county. So from a green infrastructure perspective, so from our meadows and from our watersheds that are coming out of the headwaters, we're more well positioned than other places, for instance, down in the foothills or in the valley below us. And to reiterate, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be concerned. It just means that comparatively speaking, perhaps it's not as concerning as the risk of, say, wildfire or frequent but minor flooding. I'm not saying it quite right, but that's another hazard that's in the local hazard mitigation plan, where we would expect to have localized flooding pretty frequently, almost every year. It's going to impact a lot of people. So it's more of a prevalent issue for us to approach from like a mitigation standpoint.
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that very much.
And I can also add to that in regards to the actual drought monitor, if that's like, for instance, the California drought monitor that comes out every couple of weeks. And Pascal's right that it does gear itself more towards agriculture. And, that's because they're always checking soil moisture and ETOs, evapotranspiration rates, things like that. And I believe the reason they focus more on those measurements is because it takes a lot more water to do agriculture than it does to feed rooftops. So in that regard, they're trying to gauge how much water is going to be used for agricultural purposes and how much more to expect for that use than in years past. So I think that plays a role in it too.
That's great. Thank you, Chad. Thank you very much.
Can I just add, the plan that we're working on is called the Drought Resilience Plan, but we're very much aware that when we're thinking about water shortage, drought is one aspect, and we're really making a point to make sure that the even though it's called the Drought Resilience Plan, that it's consistent with a hazard mitigation plan, right? That we're really looking at other conditions that may result in water shortage or lack of water as we're thinking through it, and drought is one component of it.
Thank you, Arit. I appreciate that feedback.
And we're getting close to wrapping up here. So Amy, can you maybe, so what are what are your next steps, and what can we, Jane and John Q Public, what can we do besides taking the survey? What can we do, and where can we find what the next steps are and what the outcome is before maybe this goes to the Board of Supervisors? Do you plan on more outreach? Do you plan on having more sessions or anything that is specific for, say, maybe, are you going to do something for the farmers? Are you going to be at the fair? I mean,
That's great. Thank
let's
you.
talk about the important stuff.
You bet. Yeah, we're going to we're coordinating with the fair. It's great. We're going to be getting this message out again, pushing hard for the survey. But when you talk about people and what they're doing, what we're finding from the results that we've gotten in is that a lot of residents that are on, residential wells are taking things very seriously, where they're reducing fixtures in their home. They're reducing overall use. You gave a great example, Pascal, of planting different types of plants that are more drought tolerant, right? That are hardy, even though you want to have, an excellent system. Some folks have written in that they're changing out their irrigation systems. They're putting in things that are more sustainable. And they're also implementing water storage systems. So we have in environmental health, we oversee the permitting of residential wells. So we get a unique perspective on folks coming in if they need to deepen their well or they're noticing a lower output. They will invest in a storage tank, and some even go as far as adding an additional tank for fire. So that should fire crews come on site, they have availability of water to hook up to supply their firefighting efforts, which I think is incredible. Other folks have implemented rain collection systems, which is interesting, and integrating those into their irrigation system. So all of these things are important. That's why feedback from folks and their inventive ideas and what they're doing is important. So next steps, outside of the survey, the next steps are, once I get the results, and we'll run this through the end of the summer, which is important to get feedback. We'll put these all together. I'll get back with this fabulous group you see here as your panelist, and then the others we listed earlier. And we will start to compile what would be considered this resiliency plan, addressing all of the potentials of what could happen, like Ari had mentioned, not only wildfire, but looking at other potentials as far as socioeconomic environment, where are the households that maybe cannot afford to, have any kind of infrastructure should an emergency happen, and weighing all of those together. Also with our partners like NID, like city water infrastructure plants and others, to if there is an outage. I'll give a great example of the collaboration with NID when we had flood a situation a couple of years ago, a couple of years ago in Washington, and NID folks came right up to support the Washington Water District and went out and helped reestablish their well and containment. So it's that kind of wonderful collaboration, recognizing there's a need to get folks and get that resource, which is part of what we're talking about here, whether it comes from drought, whether it's an emergency weather situation, looking at how are we pulling on our resources and collaborating together to make this happen. So next stages, we'll be updating the website. Once we get a draft plan out there, again, going to push that out for some public outreach. Have talked about having maybe a couple of meetings in person, perhaps here at the Rood Center, and garnering that kind of feedback, reaching out to folks if they would like more information where that's concerned. But again, we will be at the fair plugging this. We're going to keep folks updated with social media blasts and updating anyone who signs up with an email or wants to get more information. We'll be hitting you with pertinent information so that we can keep you updated. As soon as we get the plan, public review, then final stages, we'll be taking this to the board to have the board approve, and then working with Alex and her fabulous team to coordinate how we work this into the county overall plan and what that looks like as an annex to a local hazard mitigation plan. So, which is how it usually resides in other counties, right? It sits in totality underneath the county's entire plan and looking at all hazards and mitigation plans. So that's what we're looking for going forward. And I'm truly appreciative of all of our panel members and then everyone else that's on our advisory group Their feedback has been great. And the more information we can get, will really create a better plan for all of us in sustaining our quality of life and addressing all of these concerns people have about their water and where it's coming from.
Perfect, thank you. Alex, Chip, Orit, any last words of wisdom?
I mean, I would just say, like, recognize the fact that drought is both in and of itself a hazard, and it also contributes to how our local forest health responds to a number of different stressors that can impact our vulnerability to wildfire. So it's both its own thing, and then also something that we need to be mindful of. And as Pascal mentioned, in terms of like vegetation around your home and those types of things, when we're not able to irrigate with the frequency that we typically are, I think it's important for people to think through their landscaping decisions just as we would thinking through our landscaping decisions around, how are we going to protect our homes from wildfire? Think through, how do you protect your home from wildfire while using plants that are not flammable but don't require a lot of water? Because I think that does sometimes end up being a slight disconnect for people. They think, okay, I'm going to plant, drought resilience vegetation around my home. And often drought resilient vegetation is more prone to wildfire as far as igniting and carrying fire. So kind of thinking through those different aspects. And if folks want more resources on that, please reach out to OES. We can refer you to some great virtual office hours that talk about drought resistant and also wildfire friendly plantings you can do.
And if I'm not mistaken, we can, if people want to see you in person, I believe on Thursday, a OAS contingent will be in Pioneer Park, maybe. With
That-
the Nevada City and their evacuation exercise. So there's if you want autographs, you can just go to Pioneer Park and all the stars will be there.
Yes, we would love to see you.
So if I can just say a couple of words, is that just to reiterate that as we're developing this plan, for it to be really beneficial and for it to really support domestic wells and state smalls, it is so important to understand the conditions and the issues and the risks that community members are experiencing. And we're very sensitive to the fact that people don't necessarily want their infrastructure monitored and checked. But this is that partnership with the county that in order for the county to be effective in supporting the community members, both short term when there is a water shortage, but also thinking into the long term, sharing information for that purpose is particularly important for it to be a relevant and helpful plan. So again, just to really encourage that we go beyond just the tools, but really do some hear from you so we can ground truth the information that we have from the state. So just wanted to put that as part of everybody's thoughts about why it's so important to participate and engage and provide your feedback. And thank you. Thanks for inviting me to participate today.
Thank you, Orit.
Yeah, the last thing that I would like to bring up, if I may, is that water is a precious commodity and there's a limited amount of it. And NID realizes that, and we offer rebates to our customers that might help them save some water with things like rebates for toilets and cash for grass and all those things that help us save a lot of water. And we encourage folks to visit us at nidwater.com or give us a call and we'll walk you through what's available. And NID as a company has taken some really proactive measures to try to be as water efficient as possible. And we're using technology to help us out in that regard with smart meters. And we're now moving into smart canal operators. So we're trying to do our part to try to help the county as a whole with our water supply efforts and be as efficient as possible. And coming up with a drought resiliency plan only helps that moving into the future as we move into climate change.
Thank you, Chip.
Well, with that, I think, look at that timing, exactly 1 hour. You are all such great professionals. We managed this in 60 minutes, and of course, this recording will be made available so that anybody who did not have the time or who preferred to be outside can watch it at their leisure. And again, please look at the resources, do take the survey, sign up for the email updates from Amy. And if you have any questions, you can go to the county website or NID's website. There's a lot of information there, and we'll try and keep an eye on it too. With that, thanks everybody, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.